answer is yes. I'm usually angry when I'm frustrated. I'm angry when I'm sad. I'm angry when I'm worried. I'm angry when I'm scared. I get angry all the time. I'm not proud of that. If that happens in your life, then what do you need to do? If you're like me, you start to say, Jonathan, that's his name. Jonathan, I'm sorry I raised my voice. Okay? I was worried. I'm concerned. My son's an investment banker in Charlotte. God bless the kid. He goes in most mornings at 8, goes home most mornings at 2. He works for this big company, and they just kill these kids at 22. So last night he calls me and says, Dad, I'm not going home tonight. I says, okay. Son, I think it's a bad decision. And I get angry. Son, I don't care about this boss. You got to go home and get some sleep. Son, Dad, I can't do that. And then I realized I was raising my voice. And I said, son, you know what? I'm so sorry. Texted him an email and said, Jonathan, you're a great kid. I was wrong. I'm worried about you. I'm scared about you. I clearly recognize I sounded angry. So as a parent, when your child's failing, you're probably worried. You're concerned. You're frustrated. But can you use those words? If you're like me, you're probably going to slip and show the anger. In the beginning, the anger was longer. Now, pretty much as soon as the word comes out, I know that I've goofed. So it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It means that you and I for sure have to learn how to express myself more clearly. So you and I, as parents, have to be firm, consistent, and attempt not to be angry. If you have the gift, we were talking about this 80-year-old person that's a nanny. Some people have the gift that you can tell them the world's falling apart and they can stay calm and peaceful and logical. If you have that gift, then please disregard my comment. But I think the vast majority can get frustrated and angry. Okay? So firm, consistent, and angry. Now what are some other quick tricks? We do better with egg timers. What I mean by that is, if you put an egg timer in front of me and teach me, okay, John, you have all of this homework. For the first 30 minutes, let's try to do this. For the next 20 minutes, let's try to do this. And if you actually give them some structure, we do better. If you just say, do your homework, two things happen. I get overwhelmed because I feel that it's too much. You get overwhelmed because an hour later, I'm still on the first page. Okay? So if you provide some structure with a timer, that helps. As they get older, if you can teach them to write an agenda. So if they're in high school and they can write from 3:30 to 4:30, I have basketball practice. 4:30 to 5, I'm going to take a break. 5 to 6, I'm going to do my English. I'm going to hang out with my friends and have supper till 7:30, and then I'm going to go ahead and do homework from 7:30 to 9. They do better with some structure. Okay? Eye contact. Okay? If you want me to do something, don't be reading the paper. Don't be chatting on the phone. Look at me in the eyes and say, John, I need you to do this now. My poor mom would say, honey, when you get a chance, you don't ever say that to an ADD child. You just don't say that. That's sort of like giving me a gun and saying, go ahead and make a mistake. You can't say when you get a chance, or honey, this is not important. Everything is important if you're talking to us. So, son, I need you to do this now. Good eye contact, clear command. You watch. I wish I could tell you I'd written a book. Dr. Russell Barkley, B-A-R-K-L-E-Y, wrote a book about 15, 16 years ago called Taking Charge of ADHD. But he said, good eye contact, clear command. Okay? And then immediate consequence if they don't do it. Now, that also means you can give immediate praise. And there's another psychologist, and I'm embarrassed to say I forgot his name, but we live in what we call a praise deficit society. And what that means is the policeman has never stopped me to tell me I'm going the speed limit. Teachers will say, good job. And in fact, I think teachers are probably the most affirmative besides parents. But most of the time we hear when we haven't turned in the homework. We hear when we haven't thrown out the garbage. We hear when we haven't made our bed. So please praise as much. In fact, some people say praise 10 times to every time you criticize. For the ADD child, that would be exhausting because we do so many things to give you opportunities to educate us that you'd have to be talking all the time to praise us. But you might say, well, why is that important, Doc? You'll be shocked at what children feel. Most kids come to me and can remember one incident where something happened and I disappointed mom and dad. They don't seem to hear the thousands of times we tell them, I love you. I think you're wonderful. But we do remember those moments when we have disappointed you and made you feel upset. So praise, praise, praise. Now medication. And I will gladly entertain questions at the end. Medication. If you had met me 25 years ago as a pediatrician, I was very gun shy. I used Ritalin, 5 milligrams in the morning, 5 milligrams at noon, and never understood why our parents were upset and the teachers were thrilled. Because what I didn't realize, and I'll explain, Ritalin is a short-acting medicine. But back in 83, 85, 86, we just used short-acting medicine. Even when they came out with a long-acting, it just covered the teachers. And we had some vision that this ADD sort of disappeared at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and came back in the morning at 8. But we didn't realize that you were pulling your hair out in the morning, getting them on the bus, and you were pulling your hair out in the evening trying to get the homework done. So mom would come in and the hair would be in a tizzy and she'd be almost crying, and the teacher would say, Johnny's wonderful, he's getting everything done. And as a naive, foolish pediatrician, I would just keep charging. Okay, Mrs. Smith, here's the Ritalin, let's see it in 2 months. And then she'd come back and, it's sad how poorly we practiced back in the 80s. What has happened since the early 80s, the early medicines were Ritalin, Dexedrine, and Cylert. Cylert was a medicine that I actually don't use at all anymore, but it was a, quote, ADD medicine that had some liver toxicity. What has happened over the last 25 years is that they've tried to develop new products that last longer, tolerated better. The wonderful thing is that they've developed new products. The bad news is that these pharmaceutical companies really are all trying to make their finances and really sometimes create products that don't always work. So we have a lot of wonderful products. There are some that don't work so well. Strattera was a non-stimulant that we'll talk about later, but the stimulants, you have Ritalin, Dexedrine. Then the first one that came out of the boat that was long-acting was Ritalin slow release. After that, they came out with Concerta, Metadate CD, Adderall XR, and I'll go over these. And then in the last recent years, Focalin XR, Ritalin LA, Daytrana, which is a Ritalin patch, Vyvanse, and most recently a non-stimulant again called Intuniv. Now let's first talk about the stimulants. Most of them work on 2 chemicals in the brain, dopamine and norepinephrine. Okay? The side effects of stimulants, because I think you need to know, is it can cause decreased weight. If you give your child Ritalin in the morning, they probably will not eat lunch. If you're packing a huge lunch, they're probably giving it away. Okay? So most children who have those stimulants do not eat lunch. So we have to watch about decreased appetite. We have to watch weight loss. Most of the time, the children can compensate. If they have a good breakfast in the morning, and if they have a good dinner, they usually can maintain weight and continue to grow. So 25 years ago, when there were concerns that it would cause growth retardation, we said no way. What they have come to say in the last 2 years is that it probably causes anywhere from 1/2 an inch to an inch of growth retardation. So if I was supposed to be 6'7" and I had been on medicine, I might have turned out at 6'6" or 6'6½". So as a child, if you have short stature, if dad is 5'4" and mom is 4'11", and you're going to give a stimulant, although it's not common, then that 1/2 inch may mean a lot. On the other hand, if you have a child, if mom is 5'6" and dad is 5'11", and most people are 5'10", 5'11", that 1/2 an inch may not be as significant in their lifelong. Short stature may not cause that child difficulty if they're 5'10½" and they're successful, in contrast to failing out of school or not doing well academically. So you always measure benefit side effects. But 20 years ago, we really thought it caused no trouble for growth. The current study suggests a 1/2 inch, 1 to 2 centimeters. Weight loss, yes ma'am?
You mean that's like the average, or it can cause
It can, well, if you take it for your whole life. First of all, I didn't do the study, Mary, but if you take it your whole life, they have found that on average, kids can be down a 1/2 inch. Now, that's in marked contrast to what they were saying just 5 years ago. 5 years ago, they said, no problem. But I think what they did is they did some more exhaustive studies, and now a lot of the kids that were treated 25 years ago are now young adults, and they can say, well, gee, had you continued to grow where you were when you first started medicine, we would have expected a 1/2 inch more. But I don't say that to scare you. I'm just trying to make sure that you're aware of the current thoughts.
So is that associated with the weight loss or with the actual
No one
medical
knows.
use?
The easy thing is to assume that they had a little weight loss and that the weight loss caused the growth. But I have some kids who are this thin and are 6'6" that come to my clinic. And I have some kids that are this big and there are 5 feet that come to my clinic. So I don't know that, I can't always attribute weight loss to the height.
Right.
And it's not meant to frighten you, it's just a fact. Blood pressure. Generally, blood pressure has not been an issue. Okay? We check our blood pressure all the time. I know when I was in pediatrics, we did not check blood pressure all the time. It depends on how neurotic your pediatrician or family practice